Welcome to the Soul Report podcast, where spirit speaks and souls awaken. Your host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell, is here with a good friend and co-host, Les Hubert, inviting you to journey beyond the ordinary into the extraordinary wisdom of the soul. Each episode, we uncover the timeless truths waiting inside us all. Now, here is Douglas.
Welcome, my friends. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm honored to walk this path with you. Along with me is my good friend and co-producer, Jack Balick. And together, we're bringing you information on transformational conversations with incredible guests, motivational speakers, authors, and inspirational books, and those who've overcome great odds through faith, practicality, their practical spirituality, if you will, and the unseen forces of the universe. I have an interesting story that's about someone that's very close to my heart, my daughter Sherry. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, my friends. As I said, my daughter Sherry passed away when she was 38 years old. She was very ill for most of her life. Matter of fact, the first, from age 2.5 to age 4.5, she was in an institution. Make that 6.5. She was there for 4 years. And this little angel was responsible for me getting on the spiritual path. And she did it in a way that I didn't even know was happening. Sherry was born in the hospital and she was on a resuscitator. She had difficulties breathing, and it was just touch and go for my wife Karen and I whether Sherry was going to make it or not. Matter of fact, the doctor came to me one day and sometime after, and he said, "I think I made a mistake. I resuscitated her, and unfortunately, she has problems or issues." And I said, "Oh no, thank you. We love Sherry." And so as we went from impossible odds forward, Sherry had a life she was loved by her family when she came home. And coming home is a whole other story than tonight, which we're going to talk about the life after life, or life between lives, or reincarnation, if you will, past life experiences, and proof of life after death. But in that prelude, that's just about Sherry, how she came into the world, and how a man in his mid-20s, and my wife as well, our lives changed incredibly and put us on this spiritual journey that we're on. We found out about Edgar Cayce. Somebody, when I worked at the Toronto Daily Star newspaper, I was in the press room and somebody came over, and Bill O'Shea was his name, God bless him. And he said, "Hey, you should read this book." And it was all about Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet. Well, I read the whole book at one sitting. I couldn't wait to meet Edgar Cayce, because Edgar Cayce had this ability to go into what would be called a deep state of meditation and be able to give me a medical report on my daughter Sherry, who at that point in time was still in the institution. However, he had passed away. And so my hopes went up and my hopes were crushed. However, I never gave up the search for information about the divine, the metaphysical, the spiritual world, the supernatural. I was tenacious because I was motivated. I wanted to find out if something could be done for Sherry, where all the doctors were saying, "I'm sorry, we made a mistake, nothing can be done, you're young people, put her in an institution and get on with your lives." I regret on a personal level as a father that my wife and I got to take responsibility for this because Karen didn't want to. But I put Sherry into the institution, and we cried all the way home. And Sherry remained there, as I said, for 4 years, until that magical day when we met Ross Peterson, and he gave us this incredible intuitive reading, consultation, if you will, and he read her medical condition as if he was reading a chart. And then he gave us all these conditions and things and applications, chiropractic adjustments, and colonic irrigations and all kinds of stuff I never heard of before that Sherry could receive that would change her life. Well, we did. And my dear wife took care of Sherry along with our daughter Louise and the rest of the family. Heck, they didn't even know that Sherry was handicapped when the year of the child, of the handicapped child that came along in school, they were talking about handicapped children. That's when they found out that their sister, Sherry, was a special child. Well, that's how they accepted Sherry, and she was a wonderful, happy child. Unfortunately, being in that institution for such a time, it caused curvature in her spine. She had a collapsed lung. She had difficulties. She did overcome a lot of that through the therapies that were given to us. However, there came a time when Sherry passed away. We knew it was coming. We knew a year in advance. We had dreams that Sherry was flying up with the angels. We knew it was coming. And when it came, we were, of course, of two minds. One, Sherry's struggle was over, and the other was that Sherry had passed away now, and she was in the heavens with the angels. And so we were relieved on one hand, and we were grieving on the other. About a day or two after Sherry passed away, Sherry came to me in a vision or a dream. Now, her whole life, Sherry didn't speak very much, a few words, a few sounds, because of the conditions that were happening to her in her, let me say, her conditions of growth were stunted, and she had these difficulties in talking or speaking. So she came to me in the dream, and she spoke to me in straight up English. She said, "You're going to forget me." And I was devastated, even though I was sound asleep. And I said, "No, no, no, I won't." I was still asleep. My soul was talking to her soul. Her soul was conversing with me. And I said, "No, no, no, we'll never forget you." And she said in a sing-song way, "Oh, yes, you will." And she faded away. I was devastated when I woke up immediately in the middle of the night that Sherry would think that we were going to forget her. We loved her dearly. Well, I'm going to give you the quick version of what happened. This was a direct communication from Sherry's soul to me, her daddy, while I was in a state of sleep, deep sleep. And as I said, it woke me up pretty quick. So what happened, as we fast forward to Sherry's funeral, the place was packed with people. This is a little girl that never went to school, never had a date, never had friends, was confined to bed all of her life, and was about 38 years of age, but she looked like she was about 10 or 12. She didn't weigh too much because, again, those conditions when she was in the institution were pretty difficult for her to grow into a normal life. However, the place was packed, the church, and we decided we had already planned to have a reception at our house, and as such, I directed my other three children, who were, teenagers or older, and said, "You do this, you get the flowers, you get the pictures, you go home, open the doors up, make sure the washrooms are working, etc., etc." And so we all came home, and there was a large group of people coming into our house, and we had lawyers making sandwiches for everybody, and teachers there, and other people that I knew, and friends and family. And as such, I looked around, and my other two children, my daughter Louise and her brother, were missing. So I didn't pay too much attention about it. And then suddenly Louise came in and said, "Dad, Dad." I said, "Where you been?" I said, "Well, the funeral director came over and we got the certificate for to transfer human remains, transport human remains rather, and we got the pictures and everything." And then she said, "But he then asked us, what about your sister?" And my daughter Louise said, "What about her?" And he said, "You forgot her. She's over at the front of the chapel." We forgot her. Oh my God. We did. She was right. Now, that for me is proof, absolute proof of life after life, because she forecast that we were going to forget her and leave her in the chapel on the big rush home. And for me, that story is ironclad, that Sherry's spirit was, soul was around us. And the thing is, I thought later, when I assured her in my dream, "No, we're not going to forget you," her memory She said, "Oh, yes, you will," in a playful sing-song way. And she knew what was going to happen. She knew we were going to leave her remains. She was cremated, and we left her remains in the chapel. From that day to this, there's no doubt in my mind that every one of us, my friends, has lived previously, and that there is this in-between lives existence on the heavenly planes. Have you had such an experience as that? Many of my clients over the years have had similar experiences when they have seen their deceased parents come back and stand at the foot of their bed, smiling, not talking, but smiling, and looking as if they're middle-aged, looking very healthy. Others have come back in dreams and visions, and they've given information that has been helpful to the people who are alive. I'll tell you one quick story, because I know Jack is ready to get your emails and your questions. Feel free to send them to us and tell us your stories and be live with us here on the Soul Report podcast live. Send us your emails, let us know. This is a story that came from one of my clients. It turns out that the woman was an executive, and she was looking for some special gifts from her grandmother. She came and asked me, as I would do a meditation just like Ross Peterson did, just like Edgar Cayce before him did, because I was really thirsty to understand about this spiritual world. There really was a God. There really was a spiritual dimension. There really was life after life. And during that session, to make it short, the woman asked me, "Grandma passed away, but she promised me this jewelry. Where is it in the house? We're about to sell the place. I want to know, is it there or not?" Well, I came up with like a map. I said, "Go down the hallway, go down the stairs into the basement, see the pillar, turn left, go to the second pillar, reach up in the ceiling, and there will be a bag of the valuables." Okay, sounds plausible, but remember, this was a woman, and her family had no idea where this jewelry was. The only person that knew where that jewelry was the person that put it there, Grandma. And Grandma was now deceased. So the lady, to be very clever, got all the relatives over, told them the story about this intuitive man, me, had said where Grandma had hid the jewelry. They were all having a little toast with a glass of wine to Grandma. This was the last day the house was sold, the deal was going to close, and it would be over. So they were kind of reminiscing and telling stories and talking to each other. And she mentioned how she got this information from me. So with, of course, Snickers and, like little, okay, well, what is she smoking? That kind of stuff. They all followed her down the hall, down the stairs, saw the pillar, turned right, walked over to the next pillar. And as she told me the story later, they were all giggling. She reached up into the ceiling, through the tile, the removable tile, and grabbed a bag. And she pulled it out. It was dusty. And there were gasps by her relatives. And as she opened it up, there was the jewelry. Absolute proof that there is life after life. But also, Grandma, our relatives, our friends, they care about us. They do. So much so that how could I, not knowing anybody about the family, knowing anything about the house, never meeting Grandma, how would I possibly have been able to intuitively pick up that information? Because Grandma was communicating directly with me. And so as we understand that these experiences are, I understand them, and I'm sure you've had similar experiences, but it's hard to get in your head unless you have such an experience. It's hard to fathom that this really is true. But these instances are absolutely correct. And one other comes to mind. We were at the Mini Mansion Center in Hamilton, Ontario, and one of the directors whose brother had just passed away. I met him, as a matter of fact. He passed away in Ireland, and she was grieving so much about her brother. We had a group sitting there, and she asked me, "What is Michael doing? How is he?" Well, in my mind, I had a flash of him sitting around the table with some other people who happened to be her other elder brothers and sisters, and they were playing cards. This is while I'm talking to the people, and these are images flashing in my mind. And I said to her, they're holding up a card now, and he's pointing it right at my face. And it looks like it's the queen of clubs. I don't think it's the queen of spades, but it's a queen. It's a queen card. What does that mean? And this woman said, I don't know. And I said, well, look again. And I said, he's pointing the card right in my face. He's trying to get my attention. And then she said, well, my brothers and sisters used to play cards a lot, and I have no idea what that means. And I said, did they call you a special name or anything like that? Or what does that mean to you? No, 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 no. So we go on, we move to the next person, and we're discussing something. And then she said, oh my God, wait a minute. When I was a child, and she was the youngest child in the family, they used to call me Queenie. Yes, they used to call this woman Queenie when she was a child, and her deceased brother was showing me the queen of clubs or spades. She didn't even remember that, and the only person that would have known that other than herself was Michael. There again, proof that those relatives in the other plane, the other dimension, love us so much that they kind of like want us to know they're okay. And by the way, the other people playing cards at the table, if I didn't mention it before, those were her other relatives, elder brothers and sisters that were deceased as well. So they were all together in heaven. They were having a ball. They were playing cards just like they used to in Ireland. And by the way, I was in Canada. The point being is, my friends, those are stories of life after death, life between lives, life after life. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Jack has some information that we're going to explore. Send your emails in, like us on YouTube, press that button, sign up, subscribe, please. We'll be right back after this.
Did you know that Dr. Douglas James Cottrell has several other weekly channels where you can participate? Check out his Sunday International Spiritual Healing Service on Zoom. And you might also enjoy the Wake Up Podcast, exploring human consciousness, awareness, and intuition with Dr. Douglas and co-host Les Hubert. Just go to douglasjamescottrell.com and select the link to the material of most interest to you.
And we're back. It's good to have you with us, my friends. I hope you're enjoying the show. Here we are on the Soul Report live show podcast. And Jack, as you join the show tonight, you have some interesting information about life between lives.
Yes, I do. I also need to get a better hat. You've got a really nice hat there, Douglas. Yeah. Well, I found a couple of articles I thought might be interesting to take a look at and see what you think about them as well. Let's see here. I think I'll share this. This is an interesting article. Let's see here. Yep. This article is from the magazine Psychology Today. Well-respected, reviewed magazine. Evaluating the evidence for reincarnation. Can deceased people somehow be reborn in a different body? This was published in December of 2021. And they talk here, I'm just going to skip through it a little bit just to give you an overview of what the article says. There's many cases of young children who report very specific details of apparent past life, which are later verified. Some claim that children's reports of past lives could be the result of fraud, imagination, embellishment. One striking case of a past life recall is Ryan Hammonds, who made 55 specific statements about a previous life that were verified. So the author here talks about Also, Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist at University of Virginia School of Medicine. And that college, that university, has done 2,500 case studies of children's past life memories, which is pretty interesting. Um,
Well, it
so,
makes perfect sense, Jack, in that, you know, let's say there's a door you leave into the great post-existence, and then when you come back, there's a doorway you enter in from in what would be the pre-existence. But the post-existence and the pre-existence are the same place. You've just gone in spirit and come back again. So it makes perfect sense that the child coming through that door, if you will, recently in the pre-existence, would have some sort of soul memory. I know people who do regressions, and there are people who do search for your inner child, or psychologists will take you back to some point in your childhood where you've had a trauma, and they help to clean that up with the talking medicine. Well, why not just take another step or two and remember what was on the other side of that porthole from the pre-existence into the present? Makes perfect sense to me. And here's somebody looking at this in a case study, or 25, what was it, 100 or 1,000 case studies of children remembering what it's like on the other side, which, if you will, in quantum physics and quantum mechanics, you know, we know that thoughts can be influenced on the other side of the universe as well here. Like there's this binary, what you do here affects there, even though it's 1,000 miles away. So they could remember their previous times. And that means also that the soul has memory. And if
yeah,
the soul has memory, it must have purpose to remember what it did. So it makes perfect sense to me, Jack.
yeah. I thought the university is still actively doing this, talking about children between the ages of 2 and 5. Um,
That's before the age of forgetfulness, which happens about 6 or 7, by the way. You
oh,
kind of forget the previous stuff, which I'm sure can be a blessing if you didn't quite have a wonderful life before this one.
well, yeah, that's for sure. And some of the examples they state here that the children say,
Oh my God.
it's
You're
kind of
not my
interesting.
mommy? Oh gosh. Sorry, I'm getting heady. I'm reading this. You're not my mommy or my daddy? Oh my God. What a shock that would be.
Yeah. They talk about how they died. Yeah. So,
Yeah, that would be a good memory. Like, I don't mean a good one, like a nice one. I mean a memory that would be sort of, you would think, be important and ground into that ingrams of your memory, your soul memory, or your soul's DNA, that how you passed away. It would be maybe traumatic. Maybe it would be done in meditation. Maybe it would be in sleep. But most times, death is not easy. And in particular, I guess when people have children remember traumatic experiences of being harmed or injured or something like that, that would be like, I can remember all the bad times in my life when I was a kid. Can't remember too many of the good times, but I remember those bad times. This makes perfect sense, Jack.
uh, yeah. So it's interesting. They've got some podcasts here and radio programs, videos. I think I even saw something on Netflix once about this, but um, yeah. So it's uh, intriguing topic for sure.
Well, there's that one that's reading there, memories of being a World War II pilot in some past life research. Because in different parts of my spiritual development, I became interested in different things: aura gazing, past life experiences, soul communications, clairvoyance, seeing the future, and etc. And so I did meet people who remembered who they were. And one particular client that came to me, we did some past life regressions. I was talking to her and regressed her back to this time where she remembered being in the Caribbean, and she was on a Navy ship, and she remembered that she was a radio operator on the ship, and she remembered that the mask fell down from the ship. There was an accident, or maybe it was they were playing war games, and it came and it hit the Radio Shack and it killed her inside the Radio Shack. And then she also, when we pushed it a little further, she remembered her name, and she remembered where she slept, and she remembered her number, I guess her dog tag number. Wow, this was all wonderful for her revelation, because she had some fears she was trying to find out about. But this is what this lady did. She
So,
phoned up the Navy and she said, was there such a person? And there was. And that person was a young man. She was a woman in this life. She was a young man in that life. And he died in an accident in a radio room. Wow. And I had one other story about a lady who was doing some regression, and she was in a light state of meditation, and she saw herself in China. And I said, okay, look at a map. And she did. And I said, okay, that's what's on the map. This is the village you lived in. And she saw a name with 3 letters. I can't remember. So you know what she did? She went and looked, and she couldn't find it right away, but she looked in older maps, and there it was, an obscure little village in the middle of China somewhere. So this is proof to me. Now, yes, I know you can say, the people listening to this might say, the uninitiated, we might say, well, yeah, but that's all power of suggestion. Well, if I don't know about it and the person we're dealing with doesn't know about it, how can it be suggestion when it turns out to be true? So these stories, Jack, and have you got some more on the menu there about some these? I looked, the scientific research of this is very, very important.
yeah, it's interesting. I was looking at this article. They do have other examples. Of course, they have many of children. Wow, they have 2,500
Wow.
examples in the one. But this article from Psychology Today is looking for other explanations. Uh, thinking about fantasies and that sort of thing. But it's hard to know. I mean, like you're saying, if somebody knew their dog tag number, how could the child have known that? But the author from Psychology Today ends up with an interesting statement here at the end. Says, all in all, this evidence makes me feel there's no choice but to accept that it's real. Reincarnation is real. As a scientist, I feel obliged to revise my views in face of the evidence. So
That's a true scientist, Jack. He has an open mind. And one of the first rules I found when I was in high school, when they're talking about becoming a science, there were like 3 or 4 things you had to have. One of them was you had to have an open mind. You had that power of observation, you had to have curiosity, you had to document your stories, but having an open mind, and I thought, well, of course, if you're a scientist, you have an open mind. But how many times have we seen scientists on archaeological digs, seeing statues from 10,000 years ago and saying, well, that doesn't quite fit. We won't look at that. Those places in Turkey, for instance, they found these stone carvings and pillars, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But so the idea is to have an open mind, and as you have this open mind, you assess what comes to you, and if it doesn't quite fit, this is my philosophy, doesn't quite fit into what I know, don't throw it away, just put it on the shelf. And in time, the test of time, if it's not truth, it will fade away. If it is truth, something else will be added to it, and something else will be added to it. And so, as we start to move forward, we can say, as I teach at our Many Mansions International Ministry, we are fundamental, if you will, in that we are looking at the spiritual world through the eyes of the early Christians, and we're following the words of Christ. And we look at this and say, okay, if the soul is immortal, and before that, if you believe you have a soul, then we can carry on. But if you don't believe you have a soul, and this is it, sayonara when you die, then never mind. Don't debate with me. Don't worry about it. Live your life. But if you believe you have a soul, and then you believe it's immortal, and that the soul exists someplace outside of the body, and that somehow, somewhere, by some determination, that soul came and possessed this temple, this holy body, came into a newborn baby, then if you believe that, and you also believe that at a certain time later on, the body degrades, gets old, I used to describe it as like wearing a brand new pair of shoes when you're born. You go through life and you wear them out, and then at the end of your life, you any old pairs of shoes, you discard them. Think about that. When you got the new shoes, they were really important. You took care of them. But time went on, you kind of didn't take such good care of them, and then they wore out, and then finally they were useless, and whoosh, you threw them away. Okay, that's fun and games about analogy about life and death, but think about this. As you wear out the body, you throw off the clay, which is what often biblical terms for the body is, and you go where? Back to where you came from. The heavens above, the higher dimensions. The higher dimensions. You go into in-between dimensions or planes of existence, whatever term you want to call it, my friends. You go into that universal mind. You're close to the angels and the divine beings above in the post-existence. Okay, here's the kicker. Here's the point. If you can do it once, why can't you do it a second time? A third time? 100 times? 1,000 times? Why can't you do that if your soul chooses by its own free will and free choice to come down into this place we call the earth plane and take and possess a physical body? And why, when it chooses to leave the body, why can't it come and do it all over again for its own purposes? And I put forward through the world's great religions, there is a reason that you have a life at a certain time, in a certain place, with a certain race, with certain parents, your birth order, your economic situation, your village, city, country, nation. All of that's taken into account when the soul chooses. Let's see, spiraling down from the great universe. There we go, Jack. You were born. Your soul jumped into that body. The same as myself, and the same as every one of those viewers out there right now. So those people who say, I didn't ask to be born, no. Your soul chose to be born. So you better live up to it. You decided to be here, you're here. Whether you like your circumstances or not, your position, your authority, your lack of it, your finances, whatever, that's up to you to change in this life. That's up to this body, which lives once. And this physical form can do anything it wants to do, provided you, my friends, want to take advantage of it. But that soul is inside. It's observing. It's guiding you. And that's sometimes when you hear a few words in your ear, like, don't do that, or broccoli would be good, or don't forget the umbrella. When you hear that, you go, who said that? And that's your high self maybe giving you a little cosmic nudge, looking out for you. Of course, we're arrogant, we're vain, we're in control, we know it all, right? Right, here we are. And so we say, no, don't tell me what to do. And then we get soaking wet because we didn't have an umbrella. Well, spiritual awareness is to pay attention to that little guidance from within. Those words you might hear, not sentences, it will just be a little hint, or a thought will occur out of the blue, or you'll have a premonition, precognition, telepathy. Those are all the soul's language. And so if the soul has a language and it comes in to talk to you and help you out in this life, live your life fully, but don't be afraid to die. Because you're going to come back and do it all over again. You're going to make up for those mistakes and regrets you made, possibly. You're going to reap some rewards or benefit as you become more spiritually aware in the heavens above and while you're here. But that doesn't mean, don't get me wrong, doesn't mean that the more prosperous people in the world are more spiritually advanced. No. Having a lot of money can be a huge challenge. In a previous life, you lived a life as a street muffin, an urchin on the streets in Great Britain. You were poor and cold and hungry. This time you come back and you walk into a life where everything is given to you. One extreme matched or balanced by another extreme. And as you get into this concept of every action has a consequence, and that there are consequences for your actions and service in life, then it makes sense that your soul would choose to come into the world and go through a life of complete difficulty, complete pleasure, one of curiosity, one of servitude, one of military service, one of being some sort of profession, or being a minister, or just being a bum, having fun your whole life. Because in 10 other previous lifetimes you worked in the salt mines and the coal mines and you suffered. And now you come back and you have a life of luxury. Now that's way beyond our understanding or comprehension. But as you begin to investigate these things, as you begin to listen to people here on the Soul Report, as we have guests who will be coming, who are enlightened and they have experience and wisdom that we're going to share with you, my friends, as you begin to listen to these words, whether you're a novice or a professional, meaning a well-rounded, well-read person, you will find there is always something more for you to learn about your soul and about this consciousness that lives forever. I know somebody's thinking, well, Douglas, where did all the souls come from? If we were all created at one time, wouldn't it be a finite number and everybody would be here already? Well, to a finite mind, attempting to understand the infinite mind, that's a good question. However, what if the creation of souls was infinite? Okay, and what if an infinite number of souls kept coming down to do it over and over again, pardon the pun, until they get it right? Then it doesn't matter, where you have an endless supply of souls. And it then, my friend, is a privilege to have a physical life. You're here when there's maybe a few 100,000 souls waiting to take their turn. You made it. You're here. You're special. Don't waste your life. Because you have come here. You're a success already. What you do with what you have, that's up to you. But I would encourage you to do the best you can. Be of service, be charitable, help as much as you can, because that's, as I think it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, or no, it was Muhammad Ali that said, service is the money you earn, the wages you earn, so that you can pay your rent on your house in heaven. I probably messed it up a little bit, but you got the idea. I thought that's profound. So be of service, but always contribute, knowing that no matter what happens to you on those bad days, there is a reason for it. There's a lesson here somewhere. And sometimes those bad things have to happen so that you can understand the wonderful, great things that happen to you, so you can appreciate them. Because as we all know, Jack, pleasure puts us to sleep. Pain wakes us up.
Yeah, good point.
Okay. Do we have people sending us emails? If not, my friends, send us an email. Tune into the show. We'd love to hear from you. As we get close to the end of the show, Jack, do we have another bit of information for our friends?
Yeah, let's see. Actually, it's the chat that I'm looking at for questions. And no one has put in a question. If you have a question, feel free to put it in. I'll ask Douglas here, and we'll try to get it answered for you.
Okay, well, we're brand new, so come on, everybody, send in those chats. I've been calling them emails, but that's what we want to hear. How do people do that, Jack? They're on the show now watching. Explain
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we've had 12 people viewing the show here, and yeah, they just put it in the chat there in the YouTube. It's easy enough to do.
So when this is being replayed, everybody, sorry you missed the first show actually the second show, and we'll look forward to you joining up with us here next time. So,
Yeah. So we got a question
Oh, okay, go ahead.
from Susan in Yuma, Arizona. She asks, how can I stay awake to meet my soul?
How can you stay awake to meet my soul? Well, when you're attempting to meet your soul, meditation, contemplation will do it. Dreams or dream visions, that's what will happen. And so remember everybody, your soul is not like your next door neighbor. Your soul is you. And so your soul knows what you're about to ask, as well as knowing the answer to what you're about to ask. So in order to meet your soul, this is one of the ways you can do it. In a dream, you see an older vision of yourself and a younger version of yourself. And the older one is saying something to the younger one. And you're in the middle, you're observing this. And the older one will say, Wednesday night's meetings were really good. Or they'll say something that only you know the meaning to, like, why do people like horses? It'll be a short phrase. It may be a question, it may be a short statement, but it will never, ever, ever, ever tell you what to do. Should you have such a voice in your mind, those are the lower realm people that live in the astral planes, and you don't want to get involved with those dreaded people. They're just trying to intervene and interfere in your life. But because remember, you're in the great beyond, and there's other dimensions and levels, you can expect that the people who live in the basement aren't nice. The people that live or exist in the higher realms are divine. And somewhere in between, there's varying degrees. Back to the question. So in a vision or a dream, you might see your mother come back, or your father. They might be driving a car, and you're in the passenger seat. That's your soul in the driver's seat. Pay attention. You might see a bright light, and it's talking to you, or you have an overwhelming feeling of mother's love. That is your soul, or an angel, or some divine being, even a parent who's come back. Remember, you're in the neighborhood, and everybody lives in different houses. They all have different reference points. But when you ask this question, how do I talk to my soul? When you're talking now, you're talking to your soul. You're praying. Whatever you say, you're praying. Whatever you're thinking, you're praying. You are creating in another reality. The thoughts are forming matter in another reality. So again, infinite, and me attempting to give you a little glimpse of in a finite way is attempting to show you there's a lot to know. But basically, meditation. Look for an older self and have a question in your mind before you start, like, why is it I'm always late to work? Why can't I get to work on time? And then a voice might come and say, because you don't like your job. or something else about you should know better, be prepared. I mean, I'll tell you a story where a lady had a soul communication, middle-aged or a little older. This is an absolute true story. Her and her similar-aged boyfriend were about to have a wonderful romantic interlude, a weekend. This was in Europe. And the lady was all packed up. She was on the second floor of her house, sort of like a balcony, mezzanine, and she had her suitcase, and the boyfriend came up in a very expensive sports car, came in the door, and he said, "Hola, let's go, vámonos." And she heard a voice saying, "Don't get in the car." What would you do? What would you do, my friends, if you heard that? Here's somebody you're having a relationship with. You're starting off this relationship, about to have a wonderful romantic weekend. You're all packed up. He's all ready to go. And you hear, "Don't get in the car." Well, she obeyed. She listened to her soul. And she didn't get in the car. Now, I'm saying her soul, it could have been her high self, could have been an angel, but she heard the voice distinctly. Now, that contradicts what I said a moment ago, but they never tell you what to do. They don't tell you what to do about how to eat and dress and do all kinds of things. This was a command almost. It was a warning, and it was sternly given. Okay, you want to know what happened? Well, I don't know if I would have the strength to say, okay. I don't know if many of you, my friends, would say, oh my God, here's my Prince Charming. Now I have to disappoint him or turn him down. Anyway, she did not get in the car. And naturally, he became annoyed and he drove off. Sometime later that day, he was driving down the highway. A car from the opposite direction crossed the white line and head on into the sports car. It drove the engine of the sports car right into the passenger's seat. And had she been there, she would have perished. How many of us have faith like that? Well, this lady had studied Reiki and a lot of other things, and she was aware, like I'm aware, like Jack is aware, like you are aware now. So how do you get in contact with your soul? Listen. Obey those little directions you got. But if you want to start the process off, meditation is the way. Meditation is the key to unlocking your spiritual development. When you meditate, you learn what's available in the great outdoors. You have a sense you're in a new neighborhood. You're finding out the place, the great beyond, which you've been there before. You've just forgotten. Remember that you've already been there many times. Now it's new to you because you forgot. But anyway, meditation starts it. Then your dreams will get better. Then other things that go bump in the night will get together. You do a lot of things when you sleep. We'll talk about that on future shows. Anyway, I hope that's helpful to our questioner, Jack.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Okay. Well, listen, I guess we're just about at any time. Any more people kind of trying to bang on those doors and say, Jack, I have a question for Douglas.
Yeah, no
Not
more
yet.
questions, no.
Okay.
So we'll call it an evening, maybe.
Okay. Well, listen, my friends, it's a pleasure to be here with you. Jack and I it's a privilege for us. So remember, that's it for today, my friends. Thank you for joining us on the Soul Report podcast live. I hope we sparked something meaningful in your heart and spirit. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel right here on YouTube and follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok or X. Just search for my name, Douglas James Cottrell, and join our growing global village of awakened souls. If you've enjoyed today's show, hit that like button and share this episode with someone who you think might enjoy it as well. On our next episode, we explore greater mysteries of soul agreements, management of power and destiny, or whatever fits your plan in life. We talk about the soul plan. We can talk about how you choose to be here, as we alluded to earlier. Plus, we'll bring back guests who we've loved to have on my other videos and internet shows. Remember, my friends, your soul has a purpose. Always has a purpose. Your life is meaningful. You are not alone in the world. You have to pray or ask or seek through meditation and indeed be open to the love that God sends. So until next time, stay inspired, stay aware. Remember, this journey of your soul is just beginning. Walk in the light, peace and prosperity to you on behalf of your friends Jack and myself, Douglas James Cottrell. Until next time, God bless.